Well, good morning, everyone. Good morning. Welcome back to St. Paul's Universalist Church. It's good to see everyone. Glad the weather isn't too warm. In the way of announcements, today is our annual water communion. Don't worry if you didn't bring any water. We have a pitcher and a bowl, so we're good to go. Have an announcement here, a couple actually. First is from Marty. There's a sign-up sheet for ushers and greeters. Please sign up, volunteers are needed. We are slowly, painstakingly making our way into our post-2020 pandemic world. So we're going to do ushers and greeters and the traditional offering again, starting this church year. This other one is from our friends David and from Pat. Due to rising prices for coffee, supplies, and baked goods, and just about everything else if you're a grocery shopper, we are asking for a small donation to offset the rising prices. There's also a sign-up sheet for cleanup after coffee hour to give others a chance to assist in cleanup. Thank you for volunteering. I always like that. Thank you for volunteering. I say that to my kids. Thank you for agreeing to do that thing you don't know you have to do yet. Every couple of years, Mark and I decide to, mix things up. We always try to keep some traditional stuff and put some new stuff in. You will notice in your orders of service, we've changed some of the wording, so don't worry, we'll get through it together. Are there any other announcements that anyone would like to share with the congregation? Hearing none, let us proceed to our call to worship.
Holy waters, holy waters, holy waters, holy waters, holy waters, bathe us in forgiveness. Holy waters, wake us to the dawn. Holy waters, wash us in the mystery. Holy waters of ocean, stream, and shore. Holy waters, make us new. Holy waters, make us whole. Holy waters, make us free. Holy waters, make us one.
Friends, as we enter into a new church year, let us renew both our commitment and our covenant. In the time since we were last together, there are those among us who have endured a loss. May their hope be uplifted again in this community of faith. There are those among us who have struggled with hardship. May they find renewed strength in this community of faith. There are those among us who have wrestled with questions that seem to have no answer. May they find sanctuary during their search in our community of faith. There are those among us who have cherished an unexpected joy. May their rejoicing be celebrated in our community of faith. As we commit to continue our free and responsible search for truth, may we covenant to honor the many paths that have led us to this community of faith. Please join me in the words, if I can ignite this, as we light our chalice at the beginning of our new church year. May this flame, symbol of transformation since time began, fire our curiosity, strengthen our wills, and sustain our courage. And our opening song is number 100.
We will do verses 1 through 3 and 6. 1 through 3 and 6.
remain standing and join me in the words of affirmation. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest of truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve humanity in fellowship, to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with the divine. Thus do we covenant with one another and with our God. I invite you to now join me in a time of prayerful meditation with these words of Kyle Johnson. Mystery of the universe, you who some think of not as a being among other beings, but as the very ground of being itself. Thank you for this day, for another sunrise, another chance for us to witness the wonder of creation. We know that yours is a creation that is truly double-edged, a yin-yang universe. For it is indeed one in which the life-giving flame can also burn. But it is also one in which the dark, cold, misting rain gives rebirth to spring. And it is one in which, paradoxically, our acquaintance with pain and sorrow can help us better appreciate pleasure and joy. Help us then to have the courage and strength to embrace it all, to embrace what is. Help us, we who are similarly double-edged, whose love for those closest to us can so easily provoke our own tribal instincts and prejudices, whose own pain, rather than fostering empathy and compassion, may turn us inward, to dig moats, to build walls, rather than build bridges. Help us to embrace this double-edged, yin-yang universe with courage and strength. But above all, help us to do it in a spirit of love and compassion. For this, it seems, is our eternal challenge, as it is also the wellspring of our eternal grace. We will now share a moment of silence where we listen to the wisdom of our hearts and minds. Let us now join in song number 1007 in the Teal Hymnal Supplement.
There's a river flowing in my soul.
Today, we remember the 21st anniversary of the September 11th attacks. Most of us remember where we were and what we were doing. Psychologists call that flashbulb memory, those things that kind of sear into our heads. We remember planes crashing into the World Trade Towers and the Pentagon in rural Pennsylvania. We remember the anguish, the horror, the fear, and the uncertainty. Our nation was in a state of shock. September 11, 2001 is seared into our collective memories. But then, after that awful day, the clock turned and it was September 12th. And in the wake of our pain and our anger, there was this outpouring of unity, an outpouring of kindness. We had all just been through this unimaginable experience, something out of the movies. But we came together. And it didn't matter during that time what our skin color was, or our political party, or our socioeconomic status, or any of the other plethora of things that tend to separate us. We were all grieving this terrible event, and we were all there for each other. Our country's motto is E pluribus unum, out of many, one. And for a couple of weeks or so, we really lived up to that. We were united in our kindness, caring, and love for one another. I see our country today, and I really miss that September 12th world. Not the tragedy, of course, but the unity and the caring and the kindness. How far we have come since that time. An entire generation has been born that does not remember that day. We have gone from unity to ever-widening divisions, anger, violence, tribalism, and even outright hatred. Many of our news outlets sow partisanship in order to seek higher ratings and greater profits. Social media has the potential to unite us as never before, but the flip side is that it can divide us more easily than ever before. Civil discourse over different points of view is anything but civil. Too often, and increasingly, people identify themselves by who they voted for in the last election. Too often, nationalism is substituted for patriotism, an attitude that my country right or wrong, my country's the best, as opposed to love for the country, love for its accomplishments, and enough love that to realize it's not perfect and we can make it better. That more perfect union that the founding fathers spoke of. President Abraham Lincoln, during another time of deep divisions in this country, said that a house divided against itself cannot stand. He was quoting Jesus' words from Matthew's gospel. And it would be easy to point the finger of blame at one person, one group, one news outlet, or one political party when we try to think about how things got this way. And certainly there is plenty of blame to go around. But ultimately, that is not going to help us, is it? So how do we get back to that September 12th mindset? How can we turn away from our divisions and foster a spirit of unity, love, kindness, caring, gentleness, and plain old civility? It has been said that the first step in solving any problem is to admit that there is one. We as a nation need to ask ourselves what we have done to let this happen and work toward common ground. And there is hope. Despite what we see on TV or the radio or the newspaper, most Americans tend to have a moderate disposition. When you put small groups of Americans with different views in a room together just to discuss the issues, more often than not, you find that they understand each other's perspectives and that they can relate to one another. They can find that common ground. They can appreciate where each other is coming from. They realize, as it were, that the American eagle needs both its left wing and its right wing in order to fly, if you take my meaning. Another thing that occurred to me was, loving America is like loving baseball. You have your team, someone else may have their team. Okay? But you don't try to completely eradicate or shut out the other team. Sometimes one team wins, sometimes another team wins. But you all love baseball, if you're a fan of the sport. As I alluded to earlier, patriotism is defined as love for one's country. Loving someone doesn't mean that they're perfect. It means that you cherish, support, and care for them in spite of their imperfections. There are things about them that you love, but you know that they're not perfect, and you try to support them in the things that they could work on. Our church's namesake, the Apostle Paul, had some strong words about love. Now, he wasn't talking about love of country in his first letter to the church in Corinth. He was trying to give advice to these new churches that were forming over in that part of the world. And yet his familiar words could easily apply when we talk about getting back to a September 12th type of patriotism. Paul said, among other things, that love is patient and kind. It is not jealous or boastful. Love does not insist on its own way. Does not rejoice at wrong, but rejoices in the right. He goes on to say that faith, hope, and love are all important, but that love is the most important. What would it look like to see our patriotism, our love of country, through the lens of St. Paul's views on the subject? Well, we can start by being patient with our neighbors, even when they hold different views. We need to be kind, civil to one another. We don't need to belittle others or beat our chests in some primitive effort to prove our devotion, like apes trying to establish dominance. We need to stop insisting that our way, be it liberal or conservative, red or blue, Democratic or Republican, is the only way. And if we care about our country, we need to ask ourselves what is right and focus on what is right instead of being hyper-focused, like the media, on who is right. We need to have faith and hope in our founding principles, solid principles that have endured for well over 200 years. But most of all, we need to act out of love. Love is the foundation. We all love our country. May love it in different ways. We may love different things about it. But we all love our country. And if we don't have that love, then none of the rest matters. It may sound overly enthusiastic, optimistic, Pollyannish, But it is my fervent hope that we can get back to that September 12th way of being before it is too late. It shouldn't take a national tragedy to bring us together. So as we reflect on the events of today, and as the sun rises on September 12th tomorrow, may we step back, as hard as it sometimes is, and it is not easy. May we step back from our participation in, or turning a blind eye toward, the divisiveness and rhetoric, and find the strength, the power, the courage, and the guidance to live up to our Universalist values of mercy, justice, and most especially, love. Amen. We will now enter into our water communion by singing song number 136. The ancient Greek philosopher, Heraclitus of Ephesus, is famous for one belief. He taught his students that change is certain, and because all things always change, he declared, we can never step twice into the same stream. So too, our congregation today differs from the congregation that gathered water here last year and the year before that. And yet last year is still in our collective memory, and the year before, and definitely the year before that, because that was 2020, and so on and so forth. It is our tradition, as it is in many UU churches, to mix in some water saved from our previous year's water communion, adding it to this year's gathered waters. In that way, the past is carried on with the present. Our past is always with us. It makes us who we are today. A portion of the water in this bowl was gathered in this church's first water ceremony. And since water, so the scientists say, cannot be destroyed, it's just a constant water cycle, this water, some of the molecules here could have been at the bottom of the ocean, or a mammoth could have stepped through them. Could have been tears over some sadness. But the water cycle continues. The waters that we add today will in turn connect us with the time to come in the future. At this time, I invite anyone who wishes to do so to come forward and share their water and their stories from this past summer. We have the microphone on. If you didn't bring water, we have a pitcher right up there. Okay, so again, I invite you to come and share with our congregation.
This water symbolizes the places that Julie and I spent this summer: Nine Corner Lake, Glimmerglass, Hinkley Reservoir, and Pat and Marty's pool.
This is the water from the Hamilton Inn, where Marty and I celebrated 66 years of marriage. It doesn't seem possible it's been that long, with my wonderful friend and husband.
Splash of water I put in there, but just want to commemorate that I went out to the Pacific Coast to visit my son this summer, so that water symbolizes the Pacific Ocean.
That symbolizes a much smaller body of water, Skaneateles Lake. My sister and I took a luncheon cruise there with some people from where she lives this week and enjoyed it.
Represents Puka Lake, where Mike and I spent a lovely week with my girls and son-in-law, grandson, even the dog Mo. Had a great time. But it also represents Blue Mountain Lake because we had the pleasure of Mike's son visiting with us, and we went to the museum there.
I didn't bring any water this year. I usually go to my first appointment Sunday mornings down at Stewart's and have Gatorade to keep on my electrolytes. This morning I was sitting there and the farmers from BK Farm left donuts. And I didn't bring them this morning. I offered them up, but I decided not to bring them. So I was talking to the farmers and I asked them if they were still making round bales of hay. And I said, I thought they quit doing that because cows weren't getting square meals.
Any others? hard to remember. This symbolizes 3 trips to Vermont, including some time walking along Lake Champlain, where we got to see the water and have some of the water pour down on us. We went, I think there's a stream near there. We went over to the Clark Museum, where we got to see some artwork from Rodin. It was a special exhibit that drew us there, but art from many others. And the deer are very comfortable with guests, because if we were any closer to the one deer we saw, I probably could have thrown a saddle on it. And then, I'm trying to think.
Water from the Van Gogh exhibit?
Oh, right, how could I forget that? I don't know if it's still up and running, but we did go and see we call it Van Gogh, but his actual name was Van Gogh. The immersive Van Gogh exhibit. That was really something to see, and you know, he died in his mid-30s, but in his life he only sold 1 painting, and yet went on to be remembered as one of the greatest artists of all time. But they have this immersive experience. Imagine a theater with 4 walls, not only showing his artwork, but animating it, and all sorts of other things. Really gives you an appreciation both for the beauty he created and also the pain that he endured. A lot of artists, unfortunately, have something like that going on. And then we didn't get to see the Atlantic Ocean, but we dropped Mac off in Boston, 2 weeks ago? Boston University, where he begins his master's and PhD program in neuroscience. He is loving life in the big city after being a country boy in boring old Canajoharie. What is it? It's shady? Did he say? He always said Canajoharie was shady. I'm like, really? They went to college in Schenectady. It's like, walk off the north end of campus and tell me what shady is. But anyway, it's neither here nor there. Thank you to everyone who shared in words or in spirit. May the waters gathered here remind us what each of us brings to this community, and of the waters that nourished us before we were even born, that continue to give us substance and energy for our life journeys and that of all creatures on this earth. Our closing song is number 121.
Oh
Friends, we leave this gathered community, but we don't leave our connection, our concerns, or our care for each other. Our service to each other, to the world, and to our faith continues. So until we are together again, friends, be strong, be well, be true, and be loving. Please join me as we extinguish the chalice. We extinguish this chalice flame, daring to carry forward the vision of this free faith that freedom, reason, and justice will one day prevail in this nation and across the earth. Please join us. Please